Guys, we're getting to that time of year where playoffs are right around the corner. And one thing I've really noticed this year, more than years past, is the amount of players we've seen resting and taking games off. Usually it's just the same culprits, like the Boston Bruins, who have a couple guys sitting, like the Marchands, the Bergerons, because they're kind of getting up there in age and they just don't want them to tire out too much. But this year we started to see more. Teams like Toronto resting Mitch Marner, and just in general, Boston's been resting 3, 4 guys every night with like 7, 8 games left in the season. It's pretty wild. And I don't know how this is going to fare for them come playoff time. What do you think? What's your opinion on resting players, Owen?
Before we get started, we continue, I just want to say we've been off for a while, but it's good to be back. Are you excited to be back?
I'm excited to be back.
Yeah,
and guys, we're not going to be as infrequent once playoffs comes. We're going to be here. We're going to be recording videos. It's just, I mean, let's be honest. Like game 65 to like 75, it's not that hype yet. But once you get near playoffs, you're ready to go. We're ready to record, and we're going to be making some videos.
Yeah, because right now, back to the topic about low management. You know, a lot of teams right now are not trying very hard. And I get why they're not trying very hard. A lot of teams that have already locked up their playoff spot, why would they want to try hard?
Yeah, so many of the matches are already decided for these teams.
Like right now, there's the Rangers-Tampa game. Look what happened. They're playing hard at each other right now because they just don't like it. They have a lot of animosity against each other. And look what happened. Truba's injured now. So you're risking players to get injured during a time where whether you win or lose doesn't really matter. So I think it's a good idea that you rest players during these time of the year. It's a long season, 82 game season. There's going to be they need to rest up the guys when the games really matter.
It's bittersweet to me because, yes, I do agree sometimes it'd be good to rest players for the fact that you just want your players to be healthy and at their best 100% when they're in the playoffs. Some players are playing through injuries, these guys that have nicks and bruises, and those are the guys you really kind of want to consider resting. But one thing I've noticed in past years, especially with a team like Boston, who tends to be the most frequent culprit for resting players, is that sometimes it really does kill your momentum. I've seen years where Boston looks really, really good, and then they start resting some players, and then when they get into the playoffs, they just don't look 100%, and they kind of get run over in the first round. And I've seen Tampa Bay do it. They kind of led off in that year against Columbus Blue Jackets. I mean, we all remember when they lost that series, and they were a huge, huge favorite with a great season, 60 wins, and then they started resting some guys down the stretch, and then they got swept by Columbus. So that's the one worry I have with the resting players.
Yeah, I could see that point. But in saying that, I think what I recommend for some of these teams to do, rather than resting some of these players sometimes, it's actually better to play the games, but don't play as hard. Just don't go all out, right?
And what I would do, add on to that, I do agree with you.
Yeah.
I would limit minutes for superstars. So instead of playing guys like Kucherov and Marner and Marchand 22 minutes a night, play them 16 minutes. It's still enough to get some momentum going, but then you're not risking potentially them getting as tired out, less chance technically of injury if you're on the ice less. I just like that more.
Yeah, I would play less hard for sure, but be on the ice, get the rhythm, get the rhythm for the speed of the game and everything, because you don't want to be all rusty. You don't want to have like 1 week off, completely off the ice, and then you just go into the first game of playoffs, and you're rusty as heck, And
playoffs is a different animal, right? You got to be very physical. You got to be very fast. You got to be very aggressive in the corners. So the one thing for me, I personally, overall, I'd say I don't really believe in resting players that much because I just fear that if you do that, you lose that competitive edge for the playoff time. But I mean, there are some veterans out there that I'm sure can bring it regardless and turn it on a dime.
Yeah, so if you think about it, like a guy, one of my favorite goalies of all time, Andrei Vasilevsky, this is how he plays normally. In the regular season, he's notorious for not playing that great. Like even right now in the game against the New York Rangers, he doesn't look that good. But he can when the game's really on the line, he's gonna change. He's gonna be like the best goalie. He's gonna showcase that he is the best goalie in the world.
It is true.
It's some of these players, they just know how to turn the dial, turn the switch, and yeah, I know Vasi and the Tampa Bay Lightning is one of those teams that can do that.
Speaking of that, you know what? I'll actually add on to that. I think that one role I think that I would start resting my players at this point in the year is the goaltenders. I would start splitting starts down the middle, alternating if I had a top-tier goalie like Shesterkin or Vasilevsky, and you know your spot. Tampa knows they're playing Toronto. The Rangers are going to play New Jersey. This stuff's pretty much locked already at this point in the season. I would just start putting in Halak every second game, and I'd put in Elliott every second game until you're finished the season, because there's only 5-6 games left, and I think that's better because once you get to the playoffs, these guys are going to be playing every one of those games, especially if they're going to the Cup.
Yeah, another point I want to add on to that is some of these teams like the New York Rangers went to top 4 last year. They went to the conference finals last year, so they play a lot of hockey. A lot of hockey. So a team like the Rangers, with the age of some of their players as well, Kreider and all these older guys.
Yeah, the
Like
veterans.
you should be they should be definitely limiting their minutes. Like definitely monitor their minutes.
Let some of the young kids play. Like, if, for example, we'll just use the Rangers as an example because we watched them play today. Like, I'd be playing that kid line a lot more. I'd probably play them like 18, 19 minutes in
Yeah.
some of these games. Not because they're going to be doing that in the playoffs, but because you give some of the older guys some time to play less like 15-minute nights. And then these kids can get some confidence going into the playoffs. And you know what? You might need them. Like, depending on how this playoff run goes, they're against a hard New Jersey team. That's the type of stuff I would be doing. I'd get the third and fourth line more involved and start splitting the ice time going in towards the playoffs.
Yeah, how about some of the old players on, like you talk about Boston, how about Patrice Bergeron and David Krejci? I feel like they do need that load management. I feel like those players would benefit from playing less games because
Bergeron especially, more than
Yeah.
anything. Maybe
Yeah.
less than Marchand even. I think Marchand, if he had to, he could go. Bergeron, I mean, we know he's like probably on his last season in the NHL. Older guy, plays a lot of minutes, required to do a lot as a two-way center. I kind of get him more than some of these other players. They did say guys like Mitch Marner were banged up and had bumps and bruises, so I guess you don't want to risk it. But I know like that's a younger player. It's kind of less reason to rest some of those guys. Or like say if you're Tampa Bay, you might want to start resting some guys like Stamkos and maybe even Kuch, even because his injury history in the past, you might not want to risk it going into like the final 4 or 5 games. But overall, for most of these teams, I wouldn't be doing it.
one of the big things I don't like about teams playing hard at this time of the year, especially if the Tampa, a big good example is the Tampa Rangers game that's on right now. Both of these teams, even if they win, it doesn't matter in the standings. These teams are locked in third in their divisions, right?
Yeah, it's not changed.
But they're playing so hard right now because they don't like each other, and
Revenge for last year.
They're causing injuries, right? And it's not good. It's not what you want.
There is definitely something to be said for there is still an excuse to argue that you should maybe give some of these guys some time off just so you don't have to risk it. It's like the double-edged sword. You can't win either way, really.
Or push up the third pairing defenseman, or Braden Schneider, play him like 20 minutes a night or something. Right?
I would do that because
Right?
like third pairing defensemen are going to be vital for a good cup run, and I think a lot of these teams could value giving them some more minutes in the final
Yeah,
games.
and then lower the minutes of Trouba and
The
Fox
workhorses,
to like
the workhorses,
18
yeah.
minutes a night, and it'll be fine because they still are on the ice. They're still getting a feel of the game leading up to the playoffs, but at the same time they're not playing too much.
No, I think that's probably the best mix is just to cut the time back, but don't full on cut these guys.
Yeah.
But guys, let us know in the comments below what you guys think about load management coming to the NHL more and more every year, and see if you would actually want these star players to be sitting out games or just to finish the season on the ice. But until next time, take care and have a great day.
See you guys soon. Bye.